This is a production of Cornell University.
Hello and welcome to the Cornell University CyberTower. I'm Glenn Altshuler, the host of a monthly conversation with a faculty member or administrator to talk about an issue of the day or about Cornell. Today I'm ecstatic that my guest is David Skorton, the 12th president of Cornell University. David, thanks so much for coming in to talk with us today.
Glenn, thanks. Which category do I fall in, faculty or administrator?
Well, that will be the basis of the interrogation today. I think your tenure went through during the vetting process of you as president, but we can revisit these
Well, I was
things.
hoping to find out today. That would really be great.
That's good. David, you're beginning your third year as president, and many of us have gotten to know you very well, and you've been an incredible ambassador for this university with alumni, with students, and with faculty. I thought we might begin talking a little bit about your impressions of Cornell as compared with maybe those first impressions that you had 2 years ago. Talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you've learned about Cornell over these 2 years that I think have probably gone pretty quickly for you.
Well, they have gone quickly, and give me the permission just to take a moment before we delve into the question that you raised, for me to thank you in front of our listeners for being such a good force in guidance, such a good foil for discussing so many things over the 2 years. I'm very grateful to you for how much you've helped me in these 2 years. All that gratitude is over, though.
Yeah,
today,
that's about it.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean I'm going to actually answer any of your questions.
I see.
But,
okay. Well, why should you be different on this occasion
than anyone else or than I normally am?
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me step back, if I can, a couple of steps to what I thought about Cornell before coming here at all. 28 years in higher education before coming to Cornell, and my impressions were really twofold. One was that it was an incredibly excellent place, and secondly, that was an incredibly excellent place in a bewilderingly wide variety of areas. Everything from creative writing to the Mars rover, if those are fair polls for such a spectrum. And on first getting here, perhaps thinking back to around the time we did the first CyberTower discussion, I was learning that the complexity was even more than I had anticipated. Geographic complexity, programmatic complexity, and the way the university has stayed excellent and grown and prospered and thrived is by allowing a judicious mix of decentralization and allowing people in certain areas, whatever those areas may be, to follow their own aspirations, and yet pulling the campus together in certain ways that make sense. Now, fast forwarding a couple of years to now, I still believe the university is very complex. I believe now that I know it much better than I did the first time we talked on CyberTower, that it makes sense for the university to be largely decentralized. And it makes sense here, as in every excellent research university, for the faculty and the people close to the ground on whatever the issue may be to follow their own head, and for me and the administration to be supportive in general of this decentralization. Having said that, I do think in a competitive environment that we find ourselves in, and in a current environment of some financial constraints, there's just no way to sugarcoat that, I think it's important that we pull together the individual directions and individual aspirations of the colleges and the vice presidents and some of the other important units, for example, like your unit and Cornell Cooperative Extension, into some overall view of where the university is going in general. And I believe that is very important to do, not clumsily, but in a way that still maintains local prerogatives, but where it's possible for us to all share a brief document, a set of overarching goals, which, as you know, we have now at the university. So that's one impression. Decentralization's good. Some aggregate planning would make it even better. And the second is that we have opportunities at this university to excel even more than we have in the past and that we are currently. Excel in specific areas where judicious investments and risk-taking would yield some very, very positive results, and also excel in our service to the immediate community, to the upstate and overall New York situation, and acting, as I like to say, as land-grant university to the world. So those are my general impressions.
I want to talk a little bit more about each of those areas, but you've done, I think, an amazing job of getting to know the institution by engaging it and the Cornell community in a range of different ways. And I want you to talk just a little bit about them. I don't pretend to know all of the ways that you've done it. Let me just tick off a few. You live with the students. You and Robin live with the students for a week each year at orientation time. And I'm not going to ask you to talk about how many times they see you with your pajamas with the little feet in them. But you have that experience where you've really gotten to know the students. You're hosting a monthly literary gathering at your home with a Cornell faculty member leading a discussion about literature and the arts. You've scheduled meetings with many faculty and, of course, administrators. And as far as I can tell, you have a schedule in meeting alumni that is I love alumni probably as much as you do, but it's a little scary, how many meetings you have. Talk a little bit about any of those or others, and what kinds of impressions you're getting. What kinds of information are you gathering?
Well, you're kind and overly generous, as so often you are. Coming from the outside, having no personal history at Cornell, I needed to get up to speed with the culture, if I can say that. And also, I came with a certain handicap, and that is my entire earlier experience since getting my own degrees at a private institution at Northwestern University. My entire academic experience has been in the public sector at UCLA and at the University of Iowa. So I needed to understand the culture of the Ivy League, the culture of this particular institution, and I thought the first place to start that is with the undergraduate students. It's very easy to ignore the undergraduate students as a research university president. Very easy. Not on purpose, but particularly, but not only because we're in a massive fundraising campaign, it's easy to pay attention to the alumni, the faculty, the graduate and professional students, and the outside world. So I wanted to focus first on the undergraduates, and I have gotten to know them fairly well. Not well enough for my taste, but pretty well. And it was Robin's idea, many of our best ideas are her ideas, to live with the freshmen each fall for a week or so in Mary Donlin. We've done that. I won't talk to you about the PJs. I won't talk to you about the feet or the drop seat or any aspect of the PJs. I will tell you one quick vignette. When we were doing it the first year, 2 years ago, we just finished our third trip, one of the RAs called me, one of the upper class people who lives in the dorm, to help the freshmen out. And he didn't know me at all, and he said, "President Skorton, I'm sorry to bother you, but will you be having your own bathroom?" And I said, I really will. And he was hugely relieved. And I said, why are you so relieved? And he said, "Nobody here really wants to share a bathroom with you, President Skorton, no offense." So that's been a terrific experience. Also, Vice President Susan Murphy, Vice President for Student and Academic Services, has organized times for me to meet on a regular basis with the elected student leaders, undergrads, grads, and professional and student leaders at Weill Cornell. We have the occasional open forum. The Student Assembly and the GPSA invites me to come and meet with their leadership. I'm doing that this afternoon, for example. And so, yes, I've tried to do a lot of things. I also have office hours with Susan Murphy or Kent Hubble, the Dean of Students, to allow undergraduates or graduate students to come into my office and tell me whatever they want to hear about. So I have put a lot of emphasis into that, and I've been enormously impressed by Cornell students. Obviously, it's a very selective place. Last year, as I know you're aware, 33,000 plus applications for just a little over 3,000 seats in the freshman class. Though not surprising that these students are excellent, articulate, but they're also dedicated, volunteers. They want to make a difference in the world. So that was one thing. On the alumni front, because of the campaign starting so quickly after becoming president of Cornell, I thought it was very, very important. And with the lead from Charlie Flager, the Vice President for Alumni Affairs and Development, and with the leadership of the Board of Trustees and Board of Overseers, we adopted a very brisk pace of meeting people. The first year, well over 100 events, well over 100 individual meetings besides those events, literally all over the world. And as much as I thought I understood alumni relations from being president at Iowa and other chances I've had, please take this at face value. I've never experienced or even heard of the kind of engagement from the heart that alumni have with this institution. Engagement that leads them to be hugely generous. We're at $2.3 billion on a $4 billion campaign. To this day, no university has ever raised $4 billion in a campaign, and we're well on the way toward going there. But in addition to the fiscal generosity, they're very easy and helpful with direct advice to me. And as you may know, I give my personal email out everywhere, in my column in the Alumni Mag, in my column in the Daily Sun, and wherever I go, and on my business cards. And alumni take me up on this. And I get very good advice. So that's been very, very important. My impression that they're very engaged, have a stake in here, even if they haven't been on campus on a regular basis for 40 years. They have a very strong stake. And then there's another aspect, which is the chief aspect, but you notice that I brought it third, and that is interacting with the faculty more. First couple of years, I had about 100 interactions, 100 meetings of various kinds, visiting people in their labs or studios, having them come to the office. And I'm focusing from now on redoubling that effort. I feel quite comfortable with the undergraduates, at least the culture of the undergraduate education. I feel quite comfortable with alumni. I feel comfortable with the faculty. I want to get to know them better. And you, for example, have been hugely helpful in deciding how to do that. And we're going to have lunches in my office. I'm going to have lunches with some of the newer faculty, lunches with some of the, shall we say, more seasoned faculty, like the one that you set up and invited me to, and have a chance to be more out seeing what they do day to day. The last category, it's very important for me to get to know, and extremely important to emphasize, because it's also easy to forget, is we have 1,700 faculty, and we have almost 9,000 non-faculty employees, staff employees. They are the fabric of the university. They support and lead many efforts on campus, even though they're not in the faculty. And I've made an attempt to stay close to them as well, meeting regularly with the leadership of the non-faculty employees and others.
Let's talk a little bit about your priorities now as president moving forward. And you referred to them a bit earlier. And I know how deeply you care about undergraduate education and undergraduates. And so I'd like to begin by you talking about what, at least to me, is our core mission, and also something, if I may say so, that I think we already do extraordinarily well. That this is a research university, but one that is whose commitment to undergraduate education, I think, is unparalleled among the great universities. But I'd like you to talk a bit about that, and then let's move, as you talk about that as well, to talk about some of the disciplines and your thoughts about the disciplines at Cornell, and both the disciplines as you see them now and where you might see them going.
Well, like you, I believe our core mission is undergraduate education, one core mission. And whether it's the undergraduates that you interact with in Doha, Qatar, who are pre-medical students for that medical school, or whether it's the 3,100 or so first-year students that we have here in Ithaca, the reason, and I agree with you, the reason we do an extraordinarily good job of undergraduate education in the setting of a very intensive research university is because the faculty actually believe that. It's fairly important what I believe. It's most important what you believe, what the faculty believe. No amount of rhetoric on my part is going to convince a faculty member competing for federal research dollars, competing for publications in the best periodicals, to do undergraduate education well and as a high priority if she or he doesn't believe it's important. And somehow you and the leaders at this university for decades have selected faculty who are not only the leaders in their fields. It's such a cliche, but it's so true at Cornell that we have leaders in so many disciplines. But these are people who really care about undergraduate education. Of course, that's a large part of the reason why we have students flocking here. Students have all kinds of opportunities, high school students, to get a higher education. Community colleges do an excellent job for certain categories of endeavor. Four-year colleges of different kinds, liberal arts colleges, are some of our very best purveyors of undergraduate education. So a student has to have a good reason to make the choice, whatever it is, and to come to an institution so well known for graduate education and research, and rightly so. The students have to have a reason, and the reason they come here is that they get a chance to work side by side with other excellent students and side by side with the most creative faculty, I believe, anywhere, and very successful faculty, and yet there is direct attention by professors to their undergraduate education. So I think it's a very, very important priority. One thing I'm worried about, I'm not worried about the excellence of the faculty. I'm not worried about the excellence of the students. I am worried about access to the university. Let's face it, Glenn, it's an expensive proposition. My son is a senior at Stanford University, and give or take, it's about the same cost as Cornell. And it's expensive. It's expensive. Now, I can afford it, obviously, but I'm a parent thinking about those expenses for tuition and residence hall expenses and books and supplies and lab fees. And so I'm worried about us keeping the doors open to people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. And we're doing it very well. As you well know, Glenn, Biddy Martin and David Harris, are recently successful provost, longest sitting provost in the history of the university, and now chancellor at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and her colleagues set in place a bold plan to keep the doors open by figuring out a way to fund the use of grants instead of need-based loans, so that families from approximately the median national family income on down can graduate, the student can graduate from Cornell without a penny of need-based loans. And without belaboring this, let's just say that I think we need to continue to push on making sure that we remain very socioeconomically diverse. You may be aware that we continue to be fourth in the country of our peer institutions in socioeconomic diversity based on the percentage of our students who have Pell Grants, approximately 14%. So that's very, very important to me.
And that means also for the faculty member that your classes include students from an array of racial and ethnic backgrounds, from an array of rural and urban circumstances, from an array of socioeconomic circumstances, and I certainly believe that's important in the educational environment. What those students have to say to one another is really an important part of the mix, in addition to our role as an opportunity maker. And so I take it that that's something that, given state and federal exigencies around aid to higher education, an important priority for you as you're going around the country and talking to alumni.
Yeah, both of those things. Continued focus on undergraduate education by even our most storied professors, which we have, and keeping the doors open. You said that so eloquently, the point about diversity adding so much to the experience. I'll thank you not to make better points than I'm making. If there is a point like that, slip it to me quietly on paper and let me make the point.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Now, what about the disciplines, David?
Okay.
And let me formulate this a little bit provocatively, okay, as I hear some of the alumni framing it to me, that alumni realize how incredibly important the sciences are, and also how expensive the sciences are. And they ask how a president balances those pressures for resources to maintain excellence in the sciences with our commitments, legitimate commitments to the social sciences, the humanities, the creative arts. Now, I happen to know, as I hope many of our viewers do, your long-standing, deep interest and commitment to not only the creative arts, but the humanities and social sciences as well. So I'm quite enthusiastic about the balance that you're striking, but I think it's important to talk about that given the concerns just as I've outlined them, because they're out there and I think they're real.
Well, let's start by talking about the two core missions of the university other than service as a land-grant institution, and that is education and discovery. And the kind of education that we believe, all of us on campus, is the most important education is not an education that's limited to the delivery of facts to be learned and memorized or processes to be found to be a habit. But it's the idea of critical thinking and a broad ability to continue to learn throughout one's adult life. And so in order to do that, we have to deliver a palette of a broad variety of subjects, each of which is necessary to make the person part of an educated citizenry. What more important time to talk about that than during a presidential election year? And I'm not sure when this will air, but I'm assuming still before the presidential election. And so we need to deliver, if I can use that kind of a crass term, an educational product that is broad and could be defined by anyone as a liberal education. And so first of all, it's important to know that the students have to have the ability to understand what went before, to understand the historical context, the cultural context, to understand other cultures through the study of a language and the literatures of other cultures, as well as American literature and the English language literature, that they have to be able to understand quantitative reasoning, that they have to have skills in a wide variety of areas, and understand enough about science, whatever their individual major, that they can exist in a science-based world. So for the delivery of education, we have to have a broad view. Now on the discovery side, on the research and creativity side, this institution, from afar, before I came here, I thought, here's an institution that's hugely well known in the physical sciences and the life sciences on the one hand, and on selected social sciences and especially on the humanities on the other. That was a naive view of Cornell from afar. 2 years later, I think that was an accurate view of Cornell. So my job is to make sure that the breadth of disciplines are supported. Let's quickly go through the 4 categories of disciplines, for example, as the Council on Graduate Schools divides them up. The physical and mathematical sciences, arguably, traditionally the strongest area at Cornell, certainly one of the strongest, if not the strongest. And whether we're talking about physics, engineering, applied mathematics, applied physics, chemistry, many of the other sciences, computer and information science, these are areas in which Cornell is a national and international leader, and we need to continue to be a leader, not only to continue our own tradition, but because the world needs our leadership. Gosh, that sounds puffy, but I really believe that it's the case. So I'm going to be very supportive and feel that we need to emphasize those disciplines. One concrete example, and I guess this will come out sounding like a pun, I didn't mean it to be, is the physical science building that we're building. Rare is the campus in these days that is investing a lot of priorities in the non-biomedical sciences, because the exigencies, as you put it, of federal science funding for good and understandable reasons, a wartime economy, healthcare, and now volatility in our markets, has made it tough to have funding for the non-biomedical sciences in recent years. So that's one area we have to focus on. The life sciences is an area where, including all of Cornell, Weill Cornell Medical College, agriculture and life sciences, biomedical engineering, arts and sciences, many other areas, where Cornell has always been a leader, but because of Biddy Martin and other leadership in developing what we call the New Life Sciences Initiative, we are making leaps and bounds in both New York City and Ithaca, and the juncture between New York City and Ithaca in becoming very prominent in the life sciences. We need to answer the mandate to be creative and to discover in the life sciences. Now, the arts and humanities and social sciences are easy to overlook in this modern age. If you look at even the publicity that we put out about Cornell, based on the number of people working on it, you're more likely to hear about efforts in sustainability or efforts in space science, or efforts in biomedical sciences, than you are to hear about efforts in American studies or any other discipline in the humanities, creative arts, or social sciences, or importantly, the nexus between the humanities and the social sciences. And yet, what could be more important to being an educated citizen now in this unfortunately troubled time in our world than having a grounding in these fields? For a moment, just think about the domestic issues our country has and that we have right here in Tompkins County in upstate New York, of poverty, of discrepancies in how people live, disparities in health, and so on. We need to deal with those, and we deal with those through the social sciences and through cultural studies. And then think about the university as one of the major purveyors of public culture in our country, whether you're in the middle of Manhattan or whether you're in a rural area in upstate New York or anywhere else in the country. The local institution of higher education is an important place for citizens who are not enrolled in the university to connect with that enormous river, that torrent of culture and history, whether it's a local community college, whether it's a concert series, whether it's here at the Schwartz Center or anywhere else. We are important in the development and criticism and dissemination and preservation of culture and the solving of problems through the social sciences. So we need to put more emphasis on that at Cornell. We need to put more emphasis on that throughout American higher education. And as you know, with David Harris's leadership, our interim provost and deputy provost, permanent deputy provost, we have been putting enormous efforts into building up the social sciences and maintaining the tradition of preservation and discovery and creativity in the humanities.
This is an extraordinarily important moment, not only for Cornell, but for higher education, because, of course, so many faculty who began their careers in the 1960s and 1970s are retiring. So I know that recruiting the next generation of faculty in these areas is both a challenge and an opportunity. Talk about that a little bit and how you see us responding to that challenge and opportunity.
As always, you put your hand on a very, very important pulse that's affecting higher education throughout our country. Despite the removal of mandatory retirement ages in our and many other kinds of enterprises in the United States, we are facing an enormous, enormous wave of retirements of people my age, and if I can be so bold, your age, that many of us, not all, but many of us will step down from full-time activity, shall we say, in the next decade to 15 years. And so estimates range from 30% to 40% if you include the broad range of faculty and non-faculty employees. And we've never faced that kind of demographic any more than we've faced any other demographic related to our generation, the so-called baby boomers. I used to bristle at that, but I'm a proud card-carrying member of AARP, and I think about myself.
I think I'm a lot younger than you are.
Yeah, as a physician, it's possible that that's true, but I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
Not sure either. Let's just let that lie. In any case, we're expecting a huge wave of retirements. Now, whether or not they actually materialize, and in what fashion they materialize, linearly, which of course won't happen, or non-linearly, whatever way they folks decide to make their individual life decisions, we have to be ready to do three things, and three things at the same time. One, to value the continuing contribution of those who either choose to stay in harness longer than we anticipate, or to be very seriously engaged as a maritime member of the institution, members of the institution. And the combination of institutional memory and experience and the desire to bridge generations really cannot be replaced as far as I'm concerned. So we have to, in our rush to think about so-called replacement of these individuals, we have to think about staying close to the folks who can continue to participate in a very, very big way. I'm so proud of what Cornell does for workers over 50. I'm sure you know that we've been for several years in AARP's honor roll as one of the best institutions for workers over 50, and we need to continue that tradition, if anything, emphasize it. The second thing we need to do in response to the situation is to be strategic in how we are going after the faculty and staff recruitments that we need to win in order to continue to, as Biddy would say, rebuild the university. Now, to do that requires this dynamic mix that we talked about earlier of planning out in the local unit, the college, the department, the program, where only those people know what's best. You know what's best in American studies. I may have, as a faculty member, a better feel for what's needed in internal medicine. The president is not going to have his or her arms around that well enough. Those decisions, strategic decisions, who to go after, how many to go after, when to hire as an individual, when to hire as a group or so-called cluster, whether to hire at the entry level, so to speak, right out of graduate school or postdoctoral experience, or a more seasoned mid-career, or even occasionally a very senior faculty. Those decisions have to be made closer to where the action is, if I can use that. And we need to be strategic, but also opportunistic. Even though those may sound contradictory, we have to have a general idea of what we want to do. I would say focus on the social sciences right now, focus on recruitments in the life sciences, focus on areas where the provost and the deans, including you, have put your mind to it and decided the direction the ship should be turned. Maintain that, but be open to the opportunistic hire, the dual career hire, the situation where more than one person could be recruited. That's the second thing we have to do. And the third thing, which is the bulwark, the foundation of all of these, of both of these other things, is we have to continue to think about ourselves as an employer. It sounds so cold. Education is a calling, I suppose, in a certain sense, but we're also an employer, a business enterprise. And we have to think about how we handle benefits, healthcare benefits, child care, all kinds of things at which Cornell has excelled. And sure, we're going to attract people because of our reputation. Sure, we're going to attract people because of the raw salary and the startup funds for faculty and the wonderful facilities. But we'll attract them and retain them most effectively if we think about the breadth of how we treat employees. And I think it's very important to think about that. So those are our three approaches.
Yeah, and just to go back for a second, I mean, all of these observations, it seems to me, are critically important. Betting on the right horses is really, at bottom, what ensures the future of an institution. And if I can just nail home that point, so as president, you're asking and expecting that faculty, departments, and deans will essentially tell you, work with you about what those strategic bets are, as we did in the 1990s when we made some very strategic bets on the new so-called new life sciences, on computing and information sciences, and many of the bets we made then, I think, were sound bets. And then you are the voice and the ambassador both to alumni and to public funders and so on around those strategic bets?
Absolutely. I'll give you a quick metaphor how I view leadership. I view leadership, separate for a moment from management, I view leadership as an upside-down pyramid. The so-called base of the pyramid, I think, is the most important part of the university. The individual person working in every area, whether it's our colleagues right here filming this CyberTower episode, whether it's people in food services, the individual faculty member teaching a class or doing creativity or discovery. That's really what the university is all about. I am a symbol of the university, a spokesperson for the university, but I need to listen to people at the base of the pyramid, or as I view it, the top of the upside-down pyramid, and help them to communicate with each other, which is another job that I have, help people to understand where there are common aspirations, even in areas where you might not think about them. Could the philosopher, thinking about ethical concerns, get with the biomedical scientist thinking about research with stem cells, that kind of thing, for example. So it's up to me to bring people together, to be a spokesperson, but first of all, to listen. So given that metaphor for leadership, What I have been doing and what I'm going to redouble my efforts during fiscal exigencies is to distill the simple messages from what we are doing. The simple messages. Maintain faculty-initiated grant programs, whether it's in the National Endowment for the Humanities or the National Institutes for Health. Maintain the possibility at the national level for faculty-initiated research projects on a competitive basis. That's a message that I'm taking. Secondly, allow faculty and their leaders to determine the priorities of the university and assume and hope and convince our alumni, our very generous alumni, that they should take their own point of view on what they would like to contribute to financially to the university and modulate it, contour it, based on those faculty priorities. Because the alumni, of course, just like the funding agency, program directors will have their own ideas
Sure.
about what's important. We have our ideas. One of my jobs is to bring that conversation together. The best way to do that is judiciously to have the individual faculty interact with the individual donor, with the individual program officer at a federal agency. I can do a lot, but you can do better as a spokesperson for your own discipline. And so it's up to me to ask an already very busy individual to come either to my office or to Washington or wherever it may be and show what the possibilities are for not only fiscal investment, but investment in the appropriate kind of rules and regulations and superstructure to make this all possible. And then finally, of course, it's my job to be a nag, to be a lobbyist, if you will, everywhere that it's important to do that. And that includes meeting with the mayor. We meet on a regular basis, the mayor of the city of Ithaca. It means going to Albany, it means going to Washington, it means going elsewhere, and reminding them of what we need to do for them, whoever the them is in this case, and what we hope they can do with us as partners.
So maintaining excellence in undergraduate education, increasing access for undergraduates, replacing the next generation of faculty across those disciplines and replacing them with faculty who are absolutely first rate as teachers and in discovery. And now two things that I know are very important to you that you've touched on a little bit already. One is public service, and a second is Cornell's global opportunities and global responsibilities in the 21st century. Talk about each of those as priorities that are important to you as president and that you think are important to Cornell.
Well, throughout my time in higher education and many things that I've read about the times that came even before, and throughout the world, students tend to be the catalytic force for universities looking outward beyond their gates. Students tend to do that, whether it's in Asia, Europe, the Americas, or right here in Ithaca. Students got me to sign, for example, the President's Climate Commitment to maintain a very strong emphasis on sustainability and many, many other things that you know so much better than I. And so public service is an imperative that the students feel, that the faculty feel, that the staff feel, and that I feel very, very strongly. We have to be a good neighbor. We're among the largest, if not the largest employer in this state between Buffalo and Albany. We're by far the largest employer in this community. And so we have a responsibility as the largest employer and as a tax-exempt entity to give back very, very directly. And it's a wonderful, wonderful happenstance that we're a land-grant institution for the state of New York. So it's actually part of our formal mandate, one of our missions. That's very, very important. Going beyond the immediate interactions we have, whether it's on revisioning what College Town can be, or working with the mayor and people representing the minority community in the greater Ithaca area. Beyond that very, very important work, we do have the opportunity to maintain the momentum from 50 to 100 years of acting as if we are the land-grant university to the world. I will never forget, Glenn, my first visit to India in January of '07, about 6 months after I got here. and going to a facility where dozens of institutions from around the world share agricultural productivity ideas and the kind of ideas that led to what is commonly called the Green Revolution, and learning that our partners in India at this institution and other institutions using this test bed of agriculture in central to southern India viewed Cornellians as part of the motivation for the Green Revolution. What a thrilling
Yeah.
thing it was to see that. And what I've learned is that whether we're talking about interacting with already excellent universities, as we do, for example, in China with the CAPS program, China and Asia Pacific Studies program, or whether we're talking about building human and institutional capacity in Tanzania or Ethiopia, Cornell has the capacity and the willingness and the proclivity to reach out and make the world better by helping people learn to solve their own problems. I want to give you just one example of this that I'm very, very proud of. Our colleague Alice Pell, who is recently appointed as Vice Provost for International Relations, has set up a program of Masters of Professional Studies in Bahir Dar, Ethiopia. The program focuses on integrated watershed management, one of the very, very big issues in international agriculture, whether we're talking about upstate New York or East Africa, is drought or floods or anything related to water and then management of the watershed. And Alice's vision and dream was not only to deliver a wonderful master's level education, but to become a receiving partner in over 2 or 3 cohorts of master's students, step away and turn the whole program over to the Ethiopians.
Oh.
So that program is not only improving the capacity of the individual people who get master's degrees, but the capacity of that institution and that locale and that country to solve its own problems. And if I could do nothing more than urge our faculty to continue to dream in that direction, we will have done a lot.
On a sort of related issue, David, I've not yet met anyone who's met you who has not found you an extraordinarily kind and gracious human being. And although I'm still looking,
You'll find it. Keep looking.
These are polarized times, David, and on our campus, as you know, there are concerns, as there are everywhere, about the discourse, about people reaching and speaking to one another. How can you communicate the kind of civility and grace that you so beautifully embody to a campus culture that is mostly but not entirely there?
Yeah. I don't see myself as embodying those attributes, but I believe those attributes are critically important. And so a couple of years ago, in one of my first columns for the Daily Sun, I laid out some operating principles about intellectual and, if you will, political diversity on campus. The basic argument, not to belabor it, and it's an argument that I'm going to make in my very next column in the Daily Sun coming up in 10 days' time or so, is that we need more speech on campus, not less. We need more communication between people on campus, not less. We need more people willing to listen, not just stand there, but listen to someone espousing a point of view very different. So the first thing is we need more speech, not less. Secondly, and they are polarizing times nationally and locally, is we need to be a little bit gentler and more civil with each other when we are on opposite sides of a strongly felt divide, whether it's a political divide, a religious divide, a cultural divide, whatever it happens to be. And there is a certain lack of gentleness and civility in some of the communications that have occurred on this campus. So I'm right in the middle of writing this column and rewriting and editing the column with the help of others to try to make these points, that we need more speech, that I will not be a force for stopping people from speaking their minds, given that they're not espousing immediate violence or that it doesn't cross over to what I would call hate speech. but that we need more speech, number one, but that I will speak out, I'm going to speak out very shortly on the idea that hurtful speech, speech that does not advance the dialogue, is not helpful and should be condemned. Not prevented, not stopped, not choked off, but condemned, not condoned. And that's the take I'm going to. I have no illusions that that's going to immediately or even in the long run change things, but I believe I need to be heard on this issue.
We have just a couple of minutes remaining. I think many of people watching and listening would be interested a little bit in your day and how your day runs. I know there's no typical a day for President Skorton, and your energy is a little bit scary, David, to many of us. Give us a sense of the range of activities, what kinds of time you spend on each of those activities.
The first thing I do when I get up is let the dogs out. The second thing I do is review some of your previous writings. I can't think of a better way to start the day than reading one of your book reviews in the Jerusalem Post. But once I've gotten those things out of the way, the first thing I do, whether I'm in Ithaca or elsewhere, is I look at the Daily Sun and the Ithaca Journal. These are two bellwethers of how we're doing at Cornell. Not the only bellwethers, but very important bellwethers. And so I look at those quickly, not read every word, but look at them quickly every single day that they're published. 5 days for the Sun and 6 days for the Journal. The next thing I do is take a look at what's happening in the world, especially those things that are relevant to higher education or Cornell or something that we're doing at Cornell, some issue, sustainability, whatever it may be. And so I try to get all those things done before sallying forth into the world. I don't always get it done, but I most of the time do get that done. Then the rest of the day is a crazy quilt of different kinds of activities. I do periodically do what I call a desk audit, where I assess how I'm spending my time. And I spend about a third of my time on fundraising and alumni affairs. I spend another 10 to 15% interacting with the leaders of the university through whom I believe the university should be managed.
Administrative colleagues and
vice
meetings.
presidents and the occasional dean and so on. Then I spend several percent with students, and it goes on broader than that. But it is hard to identify a typical day. If people are impressed with the number of things I get done, let them not forget the many people who not only make sure I can get through the day, but the people who actually do the things that I'm hoping will be done for the university. My job is largely a job of symbolism and of listening and of reformulating what's happening on campus in a way that will stimulate and support work inside and support outside the university. And so I try to remember all of the time not to be so busy and not to be so scheduled that I can't visit with you, for example, if you have something. Many times during the presidency, many times you've had an important message to relate to me, sometimes positive, sometimes not positive. And I need to have time in the schedule to hear people who want to tell me something. Unfortunately, commonly I have to do that through email. I have 2 email accounts, and I get a lot of email, and I'm a couple days behind usually in getting back to it, but I do look at every single one eventually that I get. And so somehow between the extra meetings and seeing people socially around town or around the country, around the world when I'm traveling, and email, I do need to continue to listen. How stale and irrelevant I would become if I was putting out more than I was taking in. So that's my number one criterion. And I try to have open doors for students, even if it's literally 2 or 3 minutes that an undergraduate wants to come and for whatever reason meet me. I try to do that. And beyond that, it's hard to call anything a typical day.
David, as we're taping this, times in the financial markets in New York State are really pretty tough. There's talk about state budget cuts. There, of course, has been this almost unfathomable roller coaster with the banking and financial services sector. what sustains you? How do you, in the face of some of these challenges, what sustains you as president? What enables you each day and each meeting to maintain the optimism and the vision about Cornell that you convey?
Well, if I do convey it, I'm grateful to hear that because I feel it. I like to be able to convey it. I believe in what we are doing. I believe in what you, the faculty, are doing. I believe in what the students are doing. I believe in what the staff are doing. I believe in what the alumni feel as a link to the university. I don't have to convince myself. I almost never have to say to myself in the morning, oh God, I'm getting up and here's another day. I get out of bed enthusiastic about what the day, and the reason I say almost is I get tired, of course, like anybody else, and as I get older, I need to make sure I get a few hours of respite. But I believe that what we are doing changes lives and changes the world quite directly as well as indirectly. So it's easy to stay enthusiastic about things. And once again, I believe in this upside down pyramid, Glenn, and I believe that as long as my ears are open more than my mouth, that I will eventually be more likely to do the right thing. And so I spend a lot of time in my meetings listening to other people.
I want to, if I may say, that I may add to your list, one of the things that sustains us and that I hope sustains you is your extraordinary sense of humor, as well as the graciousness that you really embody and that is noticed by almost everyone who meets with you or who has even a casual conversation with you. And I will maybe step out of the host's role and say that, I've been at Cornell for 37 years, and I just feel great enthusiasm about this institution and where this institution is going, and about the climate on this campus as we confront some of these challenges. So if I may, I'm going to invite everyone to use the David Skorton email to communicate with you views, suggestions, reflections, and observations. Thank you for coming in today, and hope that we can do it again sometime in the not too distant future.
I'll be looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me and for your kindness. Thanks, Glenn.